to meet y'all. I am a master's level cosplayer. I'll talk a little bit more about myself in a minute. Who went to my panel here last year? Ooh, we got a bunch of new faces though, so that's exciting. Who here has cosplayed before? Who here has made a cosplay before from scratch? Who has never cosplayed before? Woo! This is my So You Want to Cosplay Tales Again panel. My panel from last year was really, really fun to do, and I'm excited that it's mostly new faces in here, so I won't be repeating myself a whole bunch. This is, So You Want to Cosplay Tales Again. Tips, tricks, and techniques to master those tricky Tales designs. Now with more bias tape, because we're going to have a full bias tape demonstration. I'm going to talk a lot about it because it's an essential pillar of Tales cosplay.
Tales and bias tape.
Correct. I'm Prin Licorice. I've been cosplaying for about 15 years now. I am a master's level competitor as well. I've competed in some high level stuff with that one right there. We're cosplay partners. We've won some pretty cool big awards and stuff. We were Best in Masters here last year as well, with our Velvet and Boggaloo, if you guys remember.
Yes.
But I'm really passionate, especially with this community, because again, I feel like the bar is really high for Tales cosplay right after the bat. It's really, the designs are not simple to start off with, So I just want to make it more accessible to folks who may not have any idea what they're doing. For those of you who have made cosplays, who has sewn before? Okay, cool. Who's never sewn? Who uses a machine to sew? Who uses hands to sew? Woo! My specialties tend to be sewing and pattern drafting, but I'm also really good at armor. Who here has done armor before? Who has done props before? Ooh, let's go. All right, we got a good mix in here. So this is I'm actually gonna take off my glove just in case.
Yeah.
This is my number one tip. Keep in mind, as the number one tip I can give, mistakes are progress, we fail upwards here. You are gonna mess up. That's the biggest thing is, a cosplay is not I get it perfect the first time, as any creative hobby is. What necessarily, being perfect can just, and desiring perfection can actually do more harm than good, especially in the beginning. Our favorite motto as we were working in cosplay tends to be, it's not just good, it's good enough. So I'm really, really, positive in the space of you're gonna mess up, it's gonna happen. You're gonna buy that $20 a yard fabric and you're gonna cut it just a little bit wrong and it's not gonna work out, and it's the sunk cost fallacy, where it's gotta, but you did learn something, even if you lost time, even if you lost money, there's still something to be gained from every experience. All right, so where do I start? Tales cosplay can be really daunting. The designs have become more intricate, detailed, and complex as the series has gone on. But do not fear. With patience, practice, and hard work, you'll be breaking down character designs in no time. This is a huge part of it for Tales cosplay. If you're just starting out, some of the earlier titles, Symphonia, Abyss, Destiny, Fantasia, etc., have simpler, more standardized designs that work as a great starting point. Whereas, you look at the Arise costumes, you look at the Zillia costumes, and you're like, oh man. The Berseria costumes. Don't be afraid to mess up. Trial and error is the core of cosplay, and you will always learn and grow with every single cosplay that you make. I cannot think of a single cosplay I've done in my entire career where I have not learned something from it. Be it a new skill, be it how not to do something, or anything like that. I'm just such a big, I'm a big proponent of failing upwards. So just kind of start, reference images, huge importance. Huge importance. The more references you have, the better equipped you are to get going. Spend lots of time Googling. This is what I tell everybody, is Google is your best friend. Maybe not the new AI whatever, but, because it will give you incorrect information. But learn to Google, learn what keywords to use, learn, like X character reference, X character turnaround, X character model, and you're gonna find a lot more success than just Googling character name. Some references may feature some inconsistencies in color, elements, shapes, etc. Follow your heart and pick what you like best. Pick whatever just makes your heart happy. There's no such thing as perfect accuracy in anything, because again, the references are going to be inconsistent. The art is going to be different than the anime turnarounds. The figures are going to be different than each piece. References come in many forms. There are turnarounds from the animes. Typically, there's some from the games, but they tend to do more work for the animes themselves to get those turnarounds to keep animating their characters on model, basically. Concept art and more. Aizen's covering it up a little bit. The alternate Kotobukiya figures work as fantastic references. I have a handful of these. They're expensive. Please don't feel obligated to dump money on very expensive figures. But you can still find a lot of really good reference images of the figures themselves online as well. MyFigureCollection.net has turnarounds of everything you can think of. Great starting points for websites. The Asalia Wiki, which is the Tales of Wiki. Tales of Hysteria, rips.tumblr.com. That has all of the art from Tales of Hysteria, which is a mobile game that sadly EOS'd this last year. But all of those references, all of those arts, clean and scanned from that Tumblr blog. Gamesfashionarchive.net. This is good for not just Tales, but it's also good for general JRPGs. They have a lot of stuff. I think they mostly only have Hysteria for Tales, but for me, when I made Alicia, it was insanely helpful. Oh, your Judith is so cute. Oh, my heart. But yeah, that's definitely a good reference. You can spin your character around, rotate them like a microwave.
Like rotisserie.
Correct. And you can, the other cool thing about Games Fashion Archive is you can pick which elements to turn on and off. So you can just look at the bracer, or you can just look at the boots. It's super helpful. I don't know who runs it, but I would love to give them a kiss.
Correct.
So, let's talk about pattern drafting. This is my baby. This is my favorite thing to do. I am the crazy person who actually loves doing mock-ups, because I feel like you learn so much from doing mock-ups. Tails Cosplays has some really wacky shapes. I suffer every time I make a new one. As somebody who has made Estelle and Judith from Vesperia, why are those skirts shaped like that? If you don't have a lot of experience with drafting, it never hurts to find a base pattern to work from. Mock-ups are integral. Again, especially if you are using a base pattern, figure out what you want to alter where with a mock-up. There's a lot of resources to find cheap patterns. Online is such a good resource now, and now there's a lot of cosplay-specific patterns you can buy on Etsy and stuff like that. It's fantastic. I just love how resourceful, and also you can be resourceful, but that the internet is now. You can buy a pattern on Etsy, download it to your computer, and print it out yourself, and then put it together, and it'll be a perfectly good sewing pattern as long as you size it correctly. Joanne frequently has sales where they're $12, $15, $20 patterns end up being $1, $1.99 for patterns, and so that's usually when I'll go in and stock up. Even Etsy will have patterns that would typically be $25, like Simplicity McCall's for $10 too. So lots of resources for pattern drafting, because I feel how many people have drafted in here? Yeah, it's scary. It's scary. Yeah, mock-ups are super integral. You can make them out of typically muslin. I have bolts and bolts and bolts of like real bad cotton, like broadcloth that I typically use for mock-ups, but muslin is just like this really cheap. It's like maybe $2 a yard. I usually buy it by the bolt. And
Goodwill has textile sections. You can go get bed sheets from Goodwill for $2.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to talk about that later. That kind of comes in. If you have a comment you'd like to add, I'm the first to say I do not know everything. I am not the perfectly know all everything. If you have a comment, please raise your hand, and I'd be happy to, like, I want everybody to get as much information. So, like, please, if you have stuff to add, please do. But yeah. Yeah, spend time before drafting, drawing or sketching out your design a few times. This will help you get your brain wrapped around it. Even if you're looking at a reference 1,000 times, jeez, you still, your brain may not like click into it until you've actually like taken the time to take it apart via like visual art. For me is so important. Like I'm a digital artist myself a little bit. And like drawing designs before I actually mapped them out to cosplay them has been like so helpful just to like, there's something in your brain, something somewhere. I don't know the science. But yeah, mock-up's super important. I would say pattern drafting, while it is super duper like daunting, I feel like for a lot of folks, it's still like once you get the hang of it, once you do mock-ups consistently, and like you get the shapes you want, your brain will wrap itself around it. Yes.
So I actually, this is my first time making cosplay in general, and I decided to go all out and draft it myself and everything.
Yeah.
But, I had a friend with me teaching me how to sew. The hardest part of this one was the cape,
Mm-hmm.
and actually an interesting trick that we found. We mocked up so many things on paper and just cut them out and put them over a different figure that I had.
Oh yeah.
But what ended up working for the cape is I have been practicing 3D modeling, and I remember that UV mapping is similar to making a pattern.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is a website where you can rip like all of Symphonia's and probably other games 3D models, and they give you the texture map,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they had this shape for Colette's
Yeah.
cape already flattened out on that texture map, and I copied it, and it worked perfect.
Yay! We'd love to see it. Yeah. Use all your research. There's so many internet resources. There's also a website where you can literally kind of plug in a 3D model and it will make a sewing pattern for you. It costs money to do, but it's like yeah. There's so many awesome resources out there. Yeah, like I said, like game models, fantastic. If you can get them, and if you can get a hold of them, and if you can rip them, it's fantastic. Yeah. Any quick questions on pattern drafting before we move along? Okay, cool beans. All right, this is what y'all came for. Bias tape application. Oh my.
Yes.
Tails dyed designs often feature some common elements, one of which is detailed trim outlines surrounding various pieces, and also like inlaid in various pieces. There are many, many, many ways to accomplish this look. Bias tape. Who knows what bias tape is? Who knows why it's like that? Yeah.
No.
Can you give me one of my fat quarters? Not the bias tape.
I kind of know what it looks like and how to buy it.
Yeah. So when you have a piece of woven fabric, and woven fabric means that it has two lines on it, two sets of fibers going this way, and sets of fibers going this way. I think it's the weft and the wane. I can't
Weft
be.
and warp.
Weft and warp. Look at you. You got the brain.
Got you.
So, if you look at a piece of fabric, if you stretch it this way, not really going to do anything. If you stretch it this way, not really going to do anything. If you stretch it this way, it's going to take a lot. Because those fibers are intersecting on those points, but they're not impeding the movement, that's what bias tape is it's cut on the bias, on the complete 45-degree diagonal of a piece of fabric, which means you can make it yourself too. You don't have to buy pre-made bias tape, because all you gotta do is just line it up and then just cut out your strips in the diagonal, which is really cool. But yeah, like it's quite a bit more than just this. And yeah, you can do that with any kind of cottony fabric, any kind of woven fabric. You can do it with knits too. You don't have to cut it on the diagonal with knits. They are knits for a reason. Knits are when the fibers are actually knitted together. That's stuff for like stretch clothes, athletic wear, etc. like that. Yes.
There's a really cool tutorial. So for bias tape, look up quilters, like quilting videos. Quilters are insane people. I work with them.
Yes.
But there is a way to make continuous strips of bias tape if you just like fold your fabric one way and mark it.
Yeah.
It's really cool, really easy.
I'm still doing the stitch together, but yes.
Also, to build off that comment, quilters are insanely precise with how they do that. So, especially with things like mitered corners, which are very, very
If you have
helpful.
a quilt shop, I highly recommend going to check them out. Quilters are another breed.
Quilters are insane.
They are
wild.
I can't even. My inset seams still get messed up all the time. That being said, and I have brought bias tape, I have brought scissors. I will do a little bit of a demonstration on how to finish your edges with bias tape while we're here. Kind of show you where to stitch and how to fold things. The thing is, bias tape does have limitations. It will not go around really circular curves. It will not. It'll start to fold and wrinkle. Like delicate curves, it'll work really well around. But for like let's say you've got a design like Estelle, where she's got these like big circular curves and she's got like the swirls in the middle and stuff. Bias tape just doesn't like going around those. It just won't do it. Which is kind of where I implement my other favorite trimming technique, where basically I cut out my pattern twice and then I cut out, I do however much I want my trim plus my seam allowance. Does anybody here not know what seam allowance is? If you don't, it's okay, yes. So seam allowance is this little bit of fabric that you're going to use on the edge that is going to go on one side of your machine so that your seam doesn't run up on the edge and so that it doesn't fall apart, basically. A lot of patterns include a 5/8 seam allowance is pretty standardized because that is a 1.5 centimeter or a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Most machines will have a little measure on the side where you can kind of gauge your seam allowance. If you're doing a pre-cut pattern, please make sure to read what your seam allowance is going to be.
And if it's included in the pattern.
Yes.
Sometimes it's
If
not.
they don't, that's a terrible pattern.
Yes.
There are also online ones that don't.
Yes.
A lot of older ones don't.
Oh yeah, well yeah, if they just don't, if they list that, if they don't list anything about the seam allowance, that's terrible. But if they say this pattern doesn't have seam allowance, then you can add like a 1/4 inch, or you can add whatever you're comfortable. I wouldn't recommend doing more than 5/8 to 3/4 at the most, because that is when your lines can get a little messed up. Like the thicker your seam allowance is, the harder it is going to be to kind of nail the curves of the pattern itself. But yeah, I like to kind of, I'll cut out my stuff twice, cut out a seam allowance, and then I'll trim it, clip all my edges so it folds under, press it, and then kind of, stitch it around. You can see a little bit on Judith here. I kind of did that where I cut out an extra, finger trim, and I folded it under, and then I pinned it all down. Similarly, that's what I did for my loop coat. You can kind of see that's made of vinyl. Applique, also a super common technique for Tails cosplays. Again, this is very relevant for those inlay designs, those things that are not on your edges. They're on the piece itself. Using an adhesive like basting spray, heat and bond, you want a stabilizer of some kind, especially if you're doing a flimsy fabric applique underneath. You can get standard stabilizer, you can get fusible iron-on, interfacing, stuff like that. You attach these pieces to your base fabric, usually with an iron, or if you're just using basting spray or basting glue, you just stick them on. Or if you're crazy, you can actually basting stitch them down, but even then that can create some wrinkles. So it's basically a piece of fabric on a piece of fabric. And then you can do your edge however you like. I do a lot of satin stitch applique, but I also like to do just a regular straight stitch, top stitched applique. You can see the back of my velvet cloak is fully satin stitch applique. That's satin stitch applique. stitch is everybody can basically do it on their machine. If your machine has a zigzag stitch, you can do a satin stitch. Is it high length, high stitch length,
High width,
stitch,
short length.
high width, short length. So turn your stitch width all the way up, turn your stitch length all the way down. And basically what that'll do is that'll tighten that zigzag stitch really, really, really tight. And it'll make this really pretty, like, back and forth, really tight, you can't even see in between the edges. And that's a great way to finish off fabrics that fray, which are the ones that are gonna fall apart on you. You know, when you feel it, you pick up a fabric at the store, this edge is kind of already doing it, as you can see. It's kind of coming off, but I think that's the selvage, so it doesn't quite count. But you're gonna wanna do that with fabrics that fray, whereas with fabrics that don't fray, I use vinyl a lot in my Tails cosplays, because it keeps its shape really, really well. We're gonna talk a little bit about structure and fabric choice in a little bit. But that you can just top stitch down. It does not fray at all. Yes?
Depending on your machine, you may have a specific satin stitch versus a zigzag. A zigzag is going to always be going at an angle, so it's always moving forward. Your machine may have a satin stitch that goes forward and then straight across. If your machine has that, use that.
Yes.
It will look better.
Yes. Yeah, that's applique. Any questions on applique? Because again, we're going to do a couple of quick demonstrations. Paint. So paint is may be tricky, but it can yield some really gorgeous results. I paint frequently. I don't let anybody tell you that paint is not a really quality way to upgrade a costume or do detailing work, because it's messy. Like it is, especially if you use your painter's tape. If you're, I have shaky hands. I have very shaky hands, but I'm still just like, I get hashtag locked in, as the kids say. And I really work at it. You can also, the thing with paint that I find really, really helpful is to have a paint in the color you want to paint your detailing in, and then a paint of the color of your fabric currently, so you can kind of go around that edge and clean it up if needed. Nobody's gonna see it unless it's really, 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 really close, and if they're that close to you, kick them. Yeah, I'm a big proponent of paint, fabric paint. My suggestion for fabric paint, like Tulip is readily available at like most fabric stores or anything like that. However, I love jacquard paints so much. My entire Luke jacket, like all the trimming on that, was painted with jacquard's gold. It's like 2 coats. That stuff is opaque, it's beautiful, it stretches really, really well. You can paint shoes with it.
Where would it be readily available?
This is kind of the tough thing, is because it is like a distributor only paint. So you're gonna find it if you guys have local art stores, not like big box stores, not like Michael's doesn't. Michael's might carry it online, but it is mostly gonna be available at like individualized art stores, really tight, like small things. If you go to their website, you can actually like look on the map, type in your location, and they will show you stores near you that carry it, which is really cool. Yes.
Amazon actually recently, their jacquard store actually just I can't talk.
You're doing great.
They actually, that's how I got my paint for Law's Pants, is they posted in their store, on their Amazon store. They posted the bigger things of their fabric paint.
Yes.
Only some colors.
Yeah.
But mostly, yes.
Yeah,
to the
usually
stores.
local art stores are going to have more selection than Amazon does, unfortunately. But yeah, if you can get a hold of them, and again, they're a little bit harder to get a hold of. They're also a little bit more expensive. They're like $12 for a little 8-ounce bottle, but super worth it. You can make it last forever. They can dilute up to 25% and still be super opaque. So you can make that bottle last forever. I still have bottles that I've been using for like 6 years, which is great. Yes?
If you mix fabric softener with acrylic paint 50/50, you can make fabric paint.
Yes, that's also true.
Also make your cosplays not look.
Yes. Yes.
Some places also have a mixing medium that will also turn your
fabric medium
into fabric paint.
Yes.
I use that in ye old Homestuck days.
don't talk about
The days of Homestuck.
where we were stuck at home.
Yeah. Embroidery. So this is a popular skill, both by hand or by machine. We have two experts up here. You do machine embroidery exclusively, and it is stunning. It's spectacular. He's incredible at digitizing. So if you guys need anything digitized, please. You guys will get to see. I have a couple examples I brought with me. Specifically, the back of my Alicia tabard has the most beautiful embroidery. You can see it in the bottom right corner there. It's gorgeous. It's so tasty. Yeah. And yeah, you can embroider by hand. It takes way longer, obviously. And there's a lot of stitches to learn
Yes.
when it comes to hand embroidery. Or you can do kind of my favorite method, which is the craft foam method, where you just glue a piece of craft foam down and you stitch over it.
Oh my god.
With embroidery thread. It works. It works.
That's still a thing in machine embroidery.
It is. It's good. It's how they make a lot of hats.
Puffy foam embroidery.
Yeah.
It's a thing in both mediums. It's cool.
Yeah.
Heat transfer vinyl, similar to applique, but it does not need to be stitched down. Make sure yours is like the heavy duty good stuff. We're talking like fabric heat transfer vinyl, not just like sticky vinyl. If you guys have a Cricut, they're wonderful tools. You do not need one, but they can be wonderful tools for helping laser cut a lot of vinyl into the shapes you want, as long as you make the pattern on their little website, their little app. But you can also just cut it out, draw it out on the back of the vinyl and cut it out yourself. And then iron it down. Really nice. If you've gotten the good, expensive heat transfer vinyl that actually is for fabric, it'll be nice and soft. When it's like ironed down, it will not create a lot of sticky, as it were, like firmness. Trims and homemade binding. Obviously, we talked a little bit about bias tape, how to make it. Trims, etc. Like there's a lot of trims on my Alicia Cosplay, a lot of very pretty ones. You can get, trim by the yard. Obviously, at places like Joann. There's a lot of really, really good local resources too. I'm not local to Indiana, but like anywhere else, look for your local op shops, look for your local like thrift stores. Fantastic places to find trims and just various like extra stuff, as it were, for sewing. You never know. You really never know. And for those who are lucky enough to have a fabric district. First off, I hate you. I'm so jealous.
Yes, we are very.
There's a lot of places with fabric districts that'll have 2 or 3 stores that are just straight up all trim, like 100% all trim, and it's crazy. Like you go in, and it's also like super cheap. It's like $1.99 a yard for like the same trim you would get at Joann for like $25 a yard.
What?
Yeah. If you've got a fabric district, look up those trim shops. They're fantastic.
Babe, I live down a dirt road. We don't have anything.
Yeah, that's fair. I think there's a fabric district in LA. There's a fabric district in New York. There's tons in
You can also
overseas.
check if some of those fabric districts have their own website.
Yes, very, very true. But a lot of larger cities actually will have them. You won't, they don't advertise them, obviously, because they're not like tourist spots.
Yeah.
But Google it, you'll never know. I think Chicago has a little one too.
Yes.
But yeah, we'll have a little bias tape demonstration for those who do not know how to go about it, which is fair. I did not do the bias tape right for like 10 years.
You're so valid for that.
Structure. This is so huge for Tales cosplays, because a lot of these outfits are not supposed to stay the way they are. They're not supposed to be bell-shaped and then just end at the knees. That's not how that works. They're not supposed to have these shoulder pads that go off into forever. That's not how fabric in real life works.
You, Estelle.
Yeah. That was probably my biggest suffering making a Tales was Estelle.
I have to talk to you later about your Estelle cosplay then, because
Yes.
I have a pattern base that I have. It's a couple years old now,
Yeah.
because I never got to it, but
And that's the cool thing. I don't think I mentioned this. We're gonna have a whole Q&A at the end. People are welcome to stick around. I'm not the end-all be-all. I don't know everything, but I'm happy if you guys are stuck on a piece or something. If you want to ask me a question about your specific cosplay and how to do it, I'm so happy to answer, because I'm a big nerd. This is my favorite thing. So structure is incredibly important. Again, you can't just make a piece and expect it to stay, you know, especially if you're making it out of lighter fabrics. Even if you're lining it, this is where fabric choice comes in really, really big. Yeah, that's gonna be kind of fun. Interfacing, super, super, super important. You can find interfacing in various weights and fusible, non-fusible, woven, non-woven. The woven stuff is great. Please start using woven interfacing instead of regular interfacing because you're gonna love yourself so much more. Like, it's so much easier to work with, it's so much nicer, it's a little bit more expensive, but it's so worth it.
Does any of it have like any sort of?
Yeah, there's stretchy interfacings you can buy, there's all sorts of stuff, yeah. It's often used as a middle layer or interlining, as we call it, in between your fashion layer and your lining layer. It can be used, the super heavyweight stuff can be used to like make, like my Alicia collar is heavyweight as well, because so it's got that like shape that helps it stand up in the back, because she's got a little stupid cape that like doesn't always go down. You can see in the corner there, that's kind of that's what it looked like before, but it's definitely like, it's stiff, it stays up. For context, interfacing is actually what's used in a lot of menswear to keep things like cuffs. You think about like just a standard dress shirt, it's gonna be in your cuff, it's gonna be in your collar to like make that stay the way it is. So even after you wash it, even after you, I don't know, throw it at the ground, even after you party at it at a wedding and sweat all over it, like it's still, after you wash it, it's still gonna be a little bit stiffer than the rest of the garment because it has that interfacing in the lining there. Buckram, heavier weight, gives great rigidity, typically used in hat making. Also, like, felt is also, like, I should say, like, felted pieces are used in hat making a lot. But buckram it's much heavier weight. A lot of furries use it for a lot of their furry stuff, too. I don't exactly know the application.
Good.
But yeah, exactly. They're scary. They're like not in it. Like their craftsmanship, the things that they do is just so out of the box and so cool.
They're
but,
so
like,
locked
they're
in.
terrifying. Yeah, it's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm like, I look at a fursuit and I'm like, I can't even comprehend how you make that. But yeah, buckram is really useful. It is what I put in my Estelle pedal skirt to make it stand up. I did not bring it because I sold it. I sold Estelle this year. But it's super rigid. You're going away. It's super rigid. It gives you that shape. If you're not putting it in all your in the entirety of your garment, which you probably shouldn't, because that would make the upstairs look bad, look very stiff. You're probably gonna want to, like, I put a waist tape in mine, which was a piece of just like regular fabric that I kind of folded over on the inside, and it stitched it down to my lining layer. That way the buckram didn't shift around and didn't get, like, you didn't see this like harsh line, I suppose. Yes?
Do you think you'd be able to use it in tandem with like large cuts of horsehair?
Yeah, depending on what you're doing.
Yeah. I was thinking specifically for the bell skirt and stuff like that.
Yeah, horsehair braid is tricky because it's kind of like bias tape where it won't go around big curves, like narrow curves, I should say. It'll go around. It does have some kind of stretch to it because it's similarly on the bias.
Yeah.
It's like woven on the bias, but it won't go around these big circular, like super rounded shapes.
Because I use horsehair for petticoats.
Yeah,
So
horsehair's fantastic for petticoats.
Oh yeah, great.
But it's this trim that you can buy. It's not actually made of horsehair. Don't worry.
Really not.
It's made of plastic.
It's
But you put it mostly in the hems of skirts and things, and it'll give you that magical girl ruffle, as I call it, basically. And it comes in different thicknesses, so you can get stuff like this for like your little sleeveys, or you can get stuff like this for a giant skirt.
Yep.
Starch/fabric stiffener, very useful when used correctly, but it can cause some wrinkling, and because it basically turns your fabric into paper. Standardized starches and like best press, which can be found at Joann and stuff like that now, which is cool, a little bit more accessible. But it actually works with stuff like cotton, natural fibers, It will not work on polyesters, fake, like anything like that, because it works with the natural fibers to create rigidity. Okay.
Understandable.
But fabric stiffener will work on basically anything because it's just like watered down Elmer's glue. It's basically making your cosplay paper mache. Which again, it works really great for creating stiffness, but it will lead to a lot of like paper wrinkling basically that's harder to get out. Yeah, consider the weight of your fabrics. In my tails projects, I tend to prefer a lot of heavier weight fabrics, not just a lightweight satin. Not a chiffon, not a charmeuse. We're looking at. I use a lot of vinyl. I love vinyl. I'm partial to vinyl. I use a lot of heavier weight satins. I use a lot of like leather likes and anything heavier. This will help you like keep the shape. Heavyweight suiting wool, really good. Suiting fabric in general, like heavier weight suiting stuff, fantastic. I definitely you can, sourcing fabric can be a little bit difficult, especially these days because Joanne is exercising their entire apparel fabric line for fleece. I've got feelings. But online is a great resource, obviously, for buying fabric. I buy a lot from Fabric Wholesale Direct. I recently ordered from iFabric, and they were pretty all right. There's so many online fabric stores. SY Fabric is great for velvets and
Stretch taffeta.
stretch taffeta is great. Yeah, it's great for stretch. What's the suede? Yes.
Oh yeah.
2B?
Yeah, we did them for our
Suede
2B.
or fixed weight?
Both. They have both. Yeah, they have a really great store. If you do like lighter weight fabrics, people are really into Dupioni silk right now. Silk Baron is crazy popular, but again, those are going to be lighter weight, so they're going to be a little bit harder to get the shapes you want if you've got a crazy shaped cosplay. What's the other one that I bought? Oh, Blue Moon Fabrics. Blue Moon Fabrics is a small place in the fabric district in LA. They have a lot of specialty spandex and like stretch knits and stuff.
Love that shit.
I had to buy a very, very specific stretch knit from them. They also have PU spandex, polyurethane spandex, which is fantastic. It looks like metal, kind of on the outside. It's very nice and shiny. And then op shops, please, you never know what you're gonna find when you thrift. Like you said, curtains, fantastic. Bed sheets, fantastic. Especially if you're starting out, and they're so cheap. They're usually like $1. Obviously, make sure to wash them when you get them home. But I'm such a big proponent for thrifting and sustainability too, and we'll talk a little bit about that in my panel on Sunday. Any question about fabric choicing, where to source fabric, anything like that? Okay, cool. Moving on. We're going to talk a little bit about props and armor. Armor, props, buckles, and bits. Tails cosplays have a lot of these, which means that's the thing is mixed medium is going to be especially with Tails cosplays, you're going to have to learn a couple of mediums. It's not just sewing. It's not just or you can commission. Obviously, that's always an option.
We use Final Fantasy cosplay.
Oh god.
More.
Belts. Trust me, Velvet was all belts.
Yeah.
Straco was 90% belts. I also am a foam smith. I work a lot with EVA foam because it's super accessible. You can find it anywhere. Foam mats at Harbor Freight are still cheap as heck. And it's not $100 like two sheets of Worbla is, So my process, and this can kind of generally be put across as a general process for a lot of materials, but this is specifically for foam. This works best on foam. Craft. You're going to cut and adhere your pieces together. It's kind of funny. Patterning foam is kind of similar to patterning clothing, except for you don't have a seam allowance. So you don't put things together right sides together. You put them together just straight up on the seam of the foam. Typically, you'll have registration marks similar to how you would in sewing on your patterns to make sure they go together. And then you, out of the blue, you'll be mind-boggled by this. You have a curve in your foam, and you're like, how did I do this? Kamui Cosplay has a lot of great patterns on their website for foam. Etsy, again, great foam pattern
love
website.
Etsy. Love
Please.
Etsy for them.
Cutting is really difficult. With foam specifically, you're gonna want a really, really, really sharp knife, because if you don't, you're gonna get those chunky bits that come off on the end, the little dingleberries. So you wanna change your knife like every 3 or 4 cuts. You will feel the resistance when you're not changing your knife. And also, cut in the direction of the foam. There's like a legit direction to the foam when you cut it. So you'll feel it, kind of like take time to get used to the difference between cutting on the foam grain and against the foam grain. Because again, a little bit more against the foam grain, you're gonna get more of those dingleberries. You're gonna get more of those chops that you don't feel that resistance.
Oh.
So, yes. Quick sealing, which is if you have made something with seams in it, you're gonna fill it with the stuff called quick seal. You can find it at any hardware store ever. You can find it at Walmart. We're all adults here, caulk. It's caulking, usually made for like windows and stuff, but it actually works really, really well at filling seams for foam. You can even water it down, take a little finger and some water and run it over it, and that will dilute it just enough to make it nice and smooth. Your initial stand, especially after quick seal, if you are like me and you kind of overgunk your quick seal, that can be sanded, which is really nice. So I usually sandpaper it. Dremel and rotary tool. I always recommend this for foam work because when you cut it, even if you cut it perfectly, you're probably not going to have the exact angle that you want. So and you're probably going to want to soften your edges up. So yes.
Oh, the thing with cutting foam, there's actually a guy who's 3D printed automatic beveling.
Yes, yes.
I'm actually planning on ordering both of them.
Yes, I've been looking at those too. But you're still probably going to want to soften that edge because not a lot of people have those really harsh edges unless you're doing like an angled seam that you need to put together. So just round out your edges on like everything. Heat treat it with a heat gun or a hairdryer works too. Foam is really porous. Foam is super porous, so heat sealing it will take all those pores and make them go, basically. They close all up, all together, and they become much, much smoother than they had if you hadn't heat treated it. After that, seal, you can use, I like Plastidip. I have a garage. We make a joke that if you have a garage, you should probably be in masters, because you're just lucky. Because a lot of people live in apartments, and they make it work, and it's incredible, but like, I feel too lucky to have a garage.
They're probably also getting a little high.
Yes. Safety first, please. Also, buy a respirator, not just a KN95, like a full respirator when you're dremeling, when you're sanding, when you're doing anything.
Please do it outside.
Do it outside. If you can't do it outside, at least have the windows open and sit like really close to the window and have that respirator on. We don't need more microplastics in our bodies. We probably have a lot, but we don't need more. But also some of that stuff can be super duper duper toxic, especially when you're dremeling. The Dremel is going to heat up your foam. It's going to make it hot, which is going to make that foam melt, which is going to release those chemicals in the foam that are so bad for your lungs. You will probably feel a little bit high, but
Protect your pets at least.
please, yes, protect your pets. Like, that's the biggest thing.
It's like
No one knows.
do it
I
for
kick a
yourself,
cat
do it for
out
your
of
pet.
my studio as soon as I'm doing anything with any adhesives, any chemicals, anything. Like, she's got to go.
Yeah.
As much as these two know, she wants
Like,
to be
if you're
in my
not
studio.
gonna do it for yourself, at least do it for your pet.
Exactly. But also, please do it for yourself. We love ourselves a little bit.
You drive a hard bargain there.
Yeah, I like Plastidip. I know it's not as accessible to a lot of people, and it has a really big learning curve. Your first few Plastidip pieces are not going to come out good. They're going to bubble, and you're not going to light them on fire. Story for another day. Plastidip is basically a rubberized coating in a can. It's like a liquidized rubberized coating that you can spray onto your piece, and it will literally like seal it and become rubberized. I usually put like 3 or 4 to 5 coats of Plastidip on my pieces at a time. It's really, really thick. It makes it really nice and smooth. Probably not as smooth as other ones, but like that's where like my other steps come in. But it's easy and like for me, it's like much easier to go through and spray those coats rather than like gently painting Mod Podge on. And it's a lot more stable, it's a lot thicker, it's gonna give you a flexible piece without cracking like some other sealers will. Mod Podge, obviously, again, super accessible. Walmart, Target, anywhere with craft stuff, it's gonna have Mod Podge. Flex Bond is specifically for cosplayers. It's like a Mod Podge, it's like a PA glue where it's like an Elmer's glue-esque kind of thing, but it's made for cosplayers, it's super flexible, more flexible than Mod Podge. Or yeah, you can just use Elmer's glue if you're starting out. That's not a big deal. Just put it in a cup and paint it right on there. But that is gonna, again, it's gonna create that smoothness that you want. Prime, I like to use filler. Why did I write that like that? I like filler primer because you can sand it afterwards, and again, it makes it even more smooth. And the whole point of foam is you want to get it smooth like a baby's bottom, because foam is, again, inherently not smooth, but the armor pieces are smooth. Yeah, I like filler primer. You can also just do, like, a lot of spray paints will have a primer included with them, which is neat. Or, yeah, a lot of acrylic paints even. Gesso's a good primer as well. Sanding again, that's why I use filler primer, so I can sand it again. We sand so much. I hate it. I don't like the texture of sanding things. It gives me the bad tinglies, but I do it for my cosplay.
Do you think you'd be able to use power tool for it?
Yeah, it still gives me the willies.
You're so valid for that. I make jewelry and it does the same shit to me.
Yeah, gives me the willies. Paint, spray paint, acrylic, however you choose. I still use a lot of acrylic on my armor and stuff like that. Weathering is an incredibly important step. Oh my gosh. There's some exceptions if you're doing really sci-fi stuff, maybe Zilia designs. I don't know why I looked at you. This is my lovely spouse. He doesn't know anything about cosplay. He's just here.
He's our handler and he's wonderful.
Yes. He's the goat.
The emotional support person.
Correct.
And he was also playing Zillia last
But
night.
like Zilia armor, like from Olympius and Zilia 2 stuff might be a little bit more on but almost everything else is gonna need weathering. And you can dry brush, you can airbrush, you're gonna wanna custom mix your colors. How I like to weather with whatever colors I'm using is I'll typically put a little bit of the paint that I've already used, that is my base coat, a little bit of a black, and a little bit of a brown to kind of give like a tiny bit of brown. For gold, brown is super important. But you'll mix that all up. You can dry brush it on, which basically means you just like delicately dip, like kind of a scragglier paintbrush, I suppose is the term, and then you basically go around your edges, you fill in your gaps, you go around places that naturally would just get worn with wearing armor, if you think about it. And then, yeah, just basically kind of stipple it on, you can airbrush it, again, similarly. And then another thing you can do is you can really, really dilute it with water, where basically you fill up a cup with mostly water, and then you add your paint, and then you wet coat it, and then you take like a paper towel and you wipe it off, so that only the paint that's left and the weathering that's left is going to be in those crevices that make it dark. Yeah, it's cool, cool. That's even better to do with like oil-based paints. Weathering is super duper important. Do it to every piece of your armor. Top coating, spray. You can do another layer of Mod Podge if you like. Spray acrylic sealer, any sort of sealer, gloss, non-gloss. But what that's going to do is that's going to keep your paint from wiping off onto your other cosplays. It's going to keep it from wiping off onto yourself, onto other people. It's a bad time if you don't seal it at the very end. Trust me, we had a little issue with Velvet last year because a lot of that paint came off. Not because I sealed it incorrectly, but there was a lot of like humidity and then like some issues with, yeah. But yeah, top coat is super duper important. So one technique I also like to do is the fabric over foam method. This is where that polyurethane spandex that I really, really like comes in. I really like doing fabric over foam. Basically, it's a shiny piece of fabric, you know, and it's got to be stretch. Whatever it is, it's got to be stretch. And you're going to make your foam. You can cut it, and you can kind of get to this, You don't need to quick seal it really. You don't need to sand it really, but get to like kind of your dremeling phase if you really want to round out the edges. I don't, depends on how well your cut is. And then you're just going to use like a really heavy duty spray adhesive. I like the 76 that you can get at like most hardware stores, the 3M76. You bought me that, it was incredible. Like I remember. And you're gonna put the back side of your fabric down, and you're gonna smack your foam piece down on it, and you're gonna like kind of peel the fabric around the piece, and then you're gonna clip your edges like you would for any curve when you're sewing, and then you're gonna glue those pieces to the back. And usually you'll put I put like a felt backing on the back so you can't see all those little pulled over pieces, but it depends on kind of what you're doing. I have an example here. My loop belt is fabric over foam, where it's a stretchy silver fabric over a piece of hunk of foam. And yeah, it looks like from a distance armor. And you can paint and weather it too afterwards. So that's a method I do like a lot. These are resin casted. I've just recently in the last year or so gotten into resin casting, epoxy resin specifically. My little Judith bow tie pastas, as everybody in the Discord kept calling them.
They're so cute.
I know. Yeah. I resin casted those. Again, it's a little bit less accessible, and it's something you're gonna want to at least put on a mask for, and at least put on a respirator for. Open that window. It's stinky. It's so bad for you. Get your cats out of the room.
And gloves.
What did you use for that?
Epoxy resin. Epoxy resin. You can do UV resin too. UV resin I like for a lot of.
Would be a little more beginner friendly.
Yeah, it's definitely more beginner friendly. It has less applications, and it's a little bit more, in the long run, more expensive.
Yeah.
Because it comes pre-mixed, but it comes in smaller containers. Whereas like you can get epoxy resin in these big containers, and it's part A, part B, so you have to mix it together, and then you can put glitter in it, and you can put mica powder in it. You can put my Judith I'll be wearing Judith tomorrow.
Would you be able to put alcohol paints in it as well?
Yes, alcohol inks are great for resin. I put little clovers in my Judith one, the gems that I made. Because they were cute and the same color. Yeah, any questions about props, armor, things of that nature?
Oh, I was just gonna say, if you're gonna do epoxy resin, just also wear gloves.
Yes,
like,
please. Oh my gosh, it's
like,
so bad for you.
Like,
Oh, so bad for your skin.
even if it seems so easy to just do that, like, trust me,
Wear gloves.
no matter how good you are at it, please wear gloves.
Yes,
For the love of God.
wear gloves,
Correct.
please. And like clean your workstation.
Like a
after.
silicone mat down
Yeah.
would also be really good to protect your
Yeah.
tables, your
I
workstations.
always at least have like
If it's a big enough area, you could probably also put tarp down.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's my kind of prop spiel. This method can be used for both props and armor. Props are easier, honestly, because props you don't have to fit to your body.
Yeah.
That's like the tough part with armor. My last kind of slide. Altering purchase pieces. This is something I'm very, very passionate about, and I have a whole panel on it. For those who went to my panel last year, I went into more detail on this, but on Sunday, I'm doing a whole buy and alter panel, which is great for beginners if you've never sewn before, if you've never cosplayed before. Come to this panel. It'll show you kind of how to get started with buying pieces and altering them and making alterations, because again, I'm such a big alterations nerd. I'm such a big tailoring nerd. I'm such a big patterning nerd. I know, what seam to take where. But yes, please come to my panel on Sunday. I have a lot of words on buying and altering, because again, it's another thing that's super duper accessible. It's something you can find pieces at the thrift store. You can find pieces at from cosplay shops, secondhand, like all sorts of stuff. So this is where we're gonna do our little bias tape and trim demonstration. Folks are welcome to kind of come up front if they want a closer-ish look. And what we're gonna talk about is kind of the different types of bias tape. So this is what I have here. It is just your standard rights. It's double fold, which means it is double folded. So obviously, again, you have your bias tape. It is super stretchy compared to like just a piece of fabric. It is folded twice, which means it's folded on the edges. This is what your single fold is going to look like, where it's folded in on the edges. But your double fold is actually gonna have that second fold where it folds in. This is great if you want a double-sided trim on both sides of your fabric. Thank you guys for coming! Oh no!
Luckily it's not that.
For me, it's less applicable depending on what you're doing, because it's a little harder to get both edges at the same time. Ultimately, you see this and you're like, okay, I'm gonna stitch this right to my fabric, just like this. And it's like, it works, but that's technically not how you bind an edge. Who knows what like right sides together means when you put things together in sewing? Yeah. Oh, sorry, that's my alarm. You can take my medication. But basically what you're gonna do is you're gonna put things right sides together with bias tape, which means these folds on the inside here, you're actually gonna open up all the way when you stitch it down. This is gonna create a nice little guideline for you on the inside here. You can make bias tape like bound without any sort of visible seam, depending on how you're binding it. And again, this is gonna go around your curved edges a little bit better than your standard just like trim or something. So basically what you're gonna do is you're gonna unfurl your bias tape. You know, again, we're just gonna pretend this is single fold because that's, again, arguably what I use more frequently. And you are going to, since this is the right side that's technically gonna go out, you're gonna put it to the right side of your edge. And then there's kind of multiple ways that you can do this. You're actually gonna put it to the wrong side of your edge. I'm a dork. So it is gonna be right side to wrong side. And what that means is you're gonna have the wrong side, the back side of your fabric, and you're gonna have the right side of your bias tape, and you're going to stitch along that nice little line that the bias tape already makes for you. It's really cool. You can sew on the inside of the line, the outside of the line. If you sew on, hello, these are my friends. If you sew on the inside of this line, you're actually gonna have a little bit of a better time folding it over. But if you sew on the outside of the line, it's fine as well. It's really up to you what you're comfortable with. Once you have that all stitched down, you're actually gonna fold the whole thing over. And that's gonna create a really nice little finished edge. That way, you don't have to then finish that edge. From there, there's multiple ways to kind of finish bias tape. You can, if you want that like almost completely seamless, you're gonna do it by hand. Which is basically you're gonna take it, your hand sew, and you're gonna pick up the tiniest bit of this underside, this under flap, and you're gonna stitch it in, and then you're gonna pull it as taut as you can. The big thing with hand sewing is you have to pull super duper tight every time you're doing it, because loose stitches will cause problems. But that will basically take care of it completely. You won't have anything visible, or you can just top stitch it. I like to do top stitching a lot of the time, especially if I'm doing fabric that cannot be ironed. It's really up to you whether you like the look. There's a lot of sewists out there like, ew, top stitching, it's visible, I can see your stitches, and it's like, yeah, it looks great.
I love top stitching. Fight.
Yeah.
Look like that.
Yeah,
Like
there's
really top
like think of, oh, that stuck to my arm.
Top stitching is very great, and that is just
Yeah.
I'm bored for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a visible top stitch is very, very super duper fine to do. On most commercial clothing, it's gonna be like you're gonna find a lot of top stitching. So that is like the one way that you do like this, just the single fold bias tape that's gonna encase this raw binding edge, but also it's going to again, it's gonna give you that nice line on the top side of your fabric. You can do it reverse if you want the back side to have bias but not the front side. And then with the double-sided bias binding, this will, again, you can always just slap it on there like that, fold both sides over the top, and then just top stitch it. You're gonna have some missed stitches, most likely on the underside. You can do this invisibly. So how you do it is, again, we're gonna actually go right sides together this time. And what we're gonna do is on the underside here, right sides together, not wrong side, right side, wrong side, is you're gonna stitch along that line, once again, right where that's open. and then you're gonna fold the whole thing over, and that'll be invisible, and then you're gonna do what is called a stitch in the ditch, which is basically,
My favorite thing to do.
we're very lucky, we have, our machines have feet that help you stitch in the ditch, it's got like a little divot on it. But you're gonna very, very, very carefully, yes,
You can get that stitch in the ditch put for any machine.
any machine.
You can buy it.
It's available.
If you don't know what type you need, find your local sewing store, they will tell you.
Correct,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
absolutely. And you are going to sew not along this edge, not on top of this edge, but right as close to it as you can get, and go super duper slow. It's totally fine to get slow. But your goal is to catch that backside edge while keeping that front side edge clean. It can kind of help to press it just a little bit beforehand, just to make sure that that backside edge is a little bit longer on the other side than it is the front side. But also if you are kind of sewing on the inside of this edge, so not the outside, but like the inside of this fold, you're gonna have an easier time having a little bit of a longer edge on the backside. And then once you do that stitch in the ditch, again, you can finish it by hand if you want. But you're gonna have a completely encased and invisible binding seam. Sweet. Yeah.
I had a question because I couldn't remember if this was fact or if this was just my delusional brain. With bias tape, especially with the double fold, isn't one side naturally slightly longer for that very purpose?
I think so, yes.
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 Okay.
You should be able to look at it, like,
And
you
it's
can
like
very obviously tell, like, this back, you guys can't see very well up here, but this backside facing me is just the tiniest bit longer
Yeah,
than the
okay.
front side.
So it wasn't a fever dream.
No,
No,
it's not.
yeah, most of them are gonna be made that way. Rights is gonna be made that way. If you make it yourself, good luck with that.
That's on you.
I make a lot of bias tape. I prefer to use single fold. It's a little bit easier for me, and yeah, and then I do typically just do a visible top stitch on the top. But again, this is going to go around your curves. It's going to go around your edges. It will not go on those super duper circular edges of Estelle, of Luke's doodly doos, whatever the
None of Soray's.
yeah. The like insets you have, like some of it will be a little bit picky, but
It's just
like
cut fabric. with
yeah,
some
exactly. Yeah, I love just the basic cut fabric trim method. That's entirely what my Luke coat is done with. Is I literally cut it out twice and then measured my 1 inch or whatever of my trim, and then I stitched it down. Does anybody have questions on bias tape? Questions? Yes.
I'm just gonna ask this for others. Finishing the edge of it, that if it's exposed, like if you have something where the edge of it needs to be exposed because it's maybe on like a placket or a pocket, what would you do?
My brain did not compute that. I love you. But
Like, let's say I have something that's standalone,
yes.
and so one or both of my edges are exposed. And so
Yes.
my bias tape goes along this edge, these two edges are exposed.
Oh,
How-
yeah, corners? Yeah. Are we talking about doing corners? Okay.
We can talk, yeah, we can.
I'm just like,
No, you're good.
I'm not picturing it. I'm not picturing it. Corners are kind of super
Sorry,
important.
referencing, but I think it'll work.
I just,
You're
yeah.
good. You're fine.
If you want to, please expand, because my brain is just not computing. You can come up here, Davina.
Okay, fine. I
You're the only one who's allowed. You're
Get
my
up there.
partner.
Fine. Like, okay, I'm gonna use your cheer cosplays. as
Yes,
an example.
please.
Okay, so the edge here is my dirt, but I have bias tape that's going all the way around here, so there's going to be an exposed edge somewhere.
Yes.
How would you finish it? I know how I would, but I'm just gonna hear.
Yeah, it really depends on what you're doing. This one in particular, these are just stitched on to the rest of the dress.
Oh,
Not make this
wait, I
cosplay.
get the question where one of
Yeah.
your panels is a finished one and one of them is not.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Got
okay.
it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You can right sides together them, where you smack them together, right sides together, and that is going to take your edge again a little bit tighter. It's gonna, if you do a really, really, really tiny seam allowance on that, you can. I'm just trying to think of a scenario in which that would be applicable. My brain is just not working.
I've just seen lots of.
Yeah,
in
there's
my
lots of
day.
ways. You
In my
can.
day.
You can, again, kind of,
Okay,
if
Dad.
you're not wanting to do right sides together, if you're not wanting to take in that seam allowance, you can fold over the edge of your non-finished one, and then sandwich them, and you can either top stitch the edge or you can ladder stitch it together. Do you have, please, if you have like a thing that you would do, please give.
I'm gonna use, because this is exactly how this is finished.
Cool.
So, join it, like, this is bound with one piece, it looks like.
Yes.
This is where the seam is.
Yes.
I can see it because I'm.
Yes.
So, talking about finishing your bias tape when it's exposed, instead of working it into a seam, the way you're gonna want to do that,
Do you want things?
I was gonna
Do
say.
you want things?
I need this.
I brought
Just need
things
this.
for.
Would you like an extra set of hands?
No, I'm good. So,
You want jazz hands?
so there's two ways you can finish bias tape. I do the quilting way. I work at a sewing machine store, so I've learned so much stuff from quilters. They're crazy. And the quilting way, can I cut this? Is it okay
Yes,
if I cut
please.
this?
That's why we brought the scissors.
Thank you. Thank you.
Another one, thank you.
So there's two ways. One is just so you measure your shape
Oh.
and then sew your edges together straight. And then
Oh, I know what you're
Oh.
talking about. I just figured it out.
There you go.
Okay.
Oh, you meant
finishing.
you meant finishing the bias.
Yes, I meant
Yeah,
finishing.
okay.
Oh,
it.
we were both thinking
I-
finishing
yeah.
it against the.
Both
Yeah.
of you not getting it means I was not explaining it right.
Okay.
It's just you. It's just you. If it's just you, it's just you. But if
It's the both of us.
it's me, I'm the problem. I'm the problem. So
Don't be part of the
you
problem.
sew them together like that,
You're the whole problem.
but that ends up with this bulky seam.
Yes.
Yes.
So the
You
way
wanna-
that I do it
Is the other way.
is I cut a little corner, and then as I'm circling this around, I'll have another corner that's like kind of folded down like this. There we go. So when it folds in half, I've got this angle, and this is going to tuck into
Yep.
that same
gonna eat
angle.
it.
And it's gonna be
Eat it.
so clean.
It's gonna look so clean,
It's
and
gonna
it
look
won't create
so
the
nice.
bulk that the seam. having
And
the seam there will.
if you are bad at math and bad at measuring, or
I'm not bad at
shapes,
measuring.
shape, or because shapes change as you're sewing along them sometimes, giving yourself this extra at the end that's gonna get sucked up in here means that you're gonna have this really beautiful finish
Yes.
that's also going to not necessarily have like a stitch line through
Yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you have a lot more grace and a lot more. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
But if you don't mind a
We
stitch,
got there.
but if you
We got there eventually.
Also-
but if you don't mind a stitch line through it and you get to a point, a miter corner is just
Yes.
mwah,
And-
mwah, mwah, mwah.
It's harder to illustrate a miter without a machine, so I'm not
Yeah.
gonna go into it too much.
There's actually a perfect video that I think you sent me on mitered
Probably.
corners that I just
Uh,
I have it tabbed
Is
forever.
it our love Professor Pincushion? I
Yes.
love her.
Yes.
I
I-
would commit crimes for her.
we know who I learned all of my
Professor Pincushion is like one
She's
of the best
fantastic.
resources for like
The other thing is if you're
for
gonna
machine
hand
sewing
sew,
for things like this.
if you're gonna hand sew binding, a very good stitch to use is a ladder stitch.
Yes.
Yes.
Because you don't have to, you can just go if you don't know what a ladder stitch is, you can go in one side, up into your fabric, down into your fabric,
It's like
and it does this really squared off zigzag,
Mhm.
and you don't have to pull as tight with every stitch. Once you get a few inches, pull.
Pull. Yep.
And then you do a few inches and
Yep.
pull.
It's so that'll help
It's
you get a
very
closed
nice.
edge on
Yes.
anything you're hand sewing that
And it
it's
hurts
on
your
plush.
hands
Every
less.
plushie ever will have a ladder stitch.
yeah.
When you
Correct.
notice and you know where to find it, you know where to find it.
Yeah, every Build-A-Bear has a ladder
Every
stitch.
Yeah. Every plushie, just like
Yeah.
plushie in general, because it's a great way to close something like that when you can't put it through a machine.
Yeah.
I'll sit down.
Thanks,
I
Dad.
love you, thank you. I love you so much. So yeah, that's bias tape is a super useful tool. A lot of obviously it's very very useful in cosplay. Again, it does have its limitations. It really does. So as much as I am a fan of bias tape, I make my own trim just constantly for Tails cosplays, especially for big curves. My entire Judith skirt, I had I was like I had to trace it out and redo it. It was
For
a
making your own
it's a whole
bias tape, it can also be pretty, if you know how, it's pretty freeing in that you
I love
can
it.
choose what your own fabric
Yeah,
is.
exactly. If you
have
want
a
your
wider
fabrics to match
selection of
exactly 2-inch bias tape that I made for Judith.
Lovely.
And that's just a black linen. And again, you can use satin, you can use any woven fabric. So satin, linen, wool,
It's a great way to
anything
recycle
woven.
fabric.
Yeah, anything woven has a weft and a warp, and is going to have that bias stretch on it. So if you don't just want the quilter's cotton standardized rights, we love this stuff. But if you want it out of satin, if you want it out of anything, that's what you're gonna go with.
Or if you want it with like a pretty pattern.
Pretty pattern, yeah, like a pretty design, brocade, yeah. And with this doesn't necessarily have to be said. If you're using a knit, if you're using a stretch, you do not have to cut it on the bias. Just cut it on the straight grain. Just slice it down the straight grain, and you're gonna have the same effect. It's gonna be a lot harder to press because knits are just way harder to press out. But yes.
Use Best Press on your knits.
Yes.
Best Press is a very lightweight starch.
Yes.
It doesn't give you the same
Yeah.
rigidity of normal starch, and it comes in I think 8 different flavors.
Ooh.
You can have a little grape. No, it's
Not
like
grape.
fresh linen and
La-
like flowers. And
Let's see.
whatever.
Linen, lavender, cherry blossom, rose. They have lemon now.
Lemon.
It'll make your thing smell good while you're pressing.
Clean the house.
Correct.
Honestly, you know what?
what do they got?
Oh, and I didn't
Orange.
I didn't
Wait,
talk
did
about
yours get
this.
Orange?
in the beginning. Press your
peach.
seams.
That's what it is.
Press your seams. I feel like this has been beaten to death. But press your seams. My tip on it is make your ironing board and your iron super accessible. Keep it set up as much as you can. Keep it available to you. That will encourage you to press. And don't just press everything at the end. I press in between every single step. I sew one seam, I press it. I sew one seam, I press it. I don't just make a whole garment and then try to press it. That's a nightmare. Yes?
What about 2-way versus 4-way stretch?
Yeah, we can talk a little bit about stretch. So 2-way stretch, which is for stuff like stretch knits. It's gonna have a stretch one direction, which is 2 ways. It's this way, but it's not gonna stretch on this one.
It'll
Yeah.
stretch on one axis but not the other.
Yeah. With 4-way stretch, it's gonna stretch both ways, which is awesome. Yaya Han's got a lot of really good ones. Unfortunately, again, Joanne is just expunging their entire apparel line, which sucks, but.
And then there's the Dragon Con fabric that Yamaha has.
What? Did you raise your hand?
No.
Okay. You're fine. No. Me.
When it comes to pressing the stretches though, how would you do it personally?
Huh?
Because with how you don't want, especially with four-way stretch, when you're pressing it, how would you mitigate the risk of stretching out the fabric and
I wouldn't.
ruining your design?
I wouldn't. I don't press a lot of my 4-way knits for that very, very reason. And also you don't really need to because they stretch. You don't really have to, and especially if you patterned it really, really well, it's gonna stretch around your body and it's gonna create that flat seam that a press seam would. If you wanna go crazy, top stitch your seam allowances down. Folks know I just made the most beautiful, tight-fitting bodysuit of Raiden from Metal Gear Solid 2. Every single one of those seam allowances is stitched down. Because again, that's gonna create that stitch.
Oh, hi.
Death only.
Because I drank water.
Okay, I guess that's
just
fine.
What?
But
Oh, sorry, I was joking.
He drank water. So he's fine.
Laps on the back?
I'm good.
I was just gonna tack onto the stretch one.
Yeah.
Is you also don't want to risk just straight up melting.
yeah,
your
yeah, that's
stretch.
the other thing is a lot of stretch
like-
knits are gonna be polyester and they're gonna just melt.
Yeah,
It's
like
not fun. And then
you-
also that is also gonna release those really bad chemicals that you
yeah.
don't
So
want.
I just recommend do not press.
Yeah, with high stretch knits, you can again occasionally press like lower stretch knits, like more softer knits.
Like
but
sweatshirt fleece,
Sweatshirt fleece.
knits.
Would you recommend, because when I do it, like when it comes to that, I just don't turn the iron on. I just actually cold press it just so I have.
Yeah, yeah, you
Oh
can do
yeah,
that.
cold
You
press
can
is
like
fine,
flap
but
it.
if
Yeah,
you were to try to
can
add
flap
any
it.
heat, you're not.
You can do
You're not
that.
gonna.
You can swing it.
Yeah.
A lot of the times that just comes down to again like with the stretch fabric, you're not gonna need that really harsh seam. You're not gonna really need. The reason I top stitch my seam allowances down on some stretch stuff is because depending on the fabric, it's going to be really bulky underneath. So I want to reduce that bulk, and that is a way to reduce that bulk. But if you're using like a lightweight stretch knit, you do not have to do anything. You don't got to do anything. That actually, that kind of bleeds into. We are going to have, the last part of the panel is just Q&A. It's going to be also cosplay consulting. Again, I say this, I am not the end all be all. I do not know everything. In fact, I love learning things, as we know. But I'm always happy to help if somebody is like, how the heck do I make this? How would I do this? And we have, I know a handful of other people who are very, very proficient in the audience right now. So yeah, does anybody have any questions? Anybody have any questions?
An amazing resource, please use that. Please.
Yes. My skill level is 0.
Great place to start.
You can only go up from there.
Yeah, correct.
How would I had a ribbon and vinyl, and I'm like, okay, I need arrows.
Yeah.
So this is the best that I can do. How do I do this but good?
First thing is a lot of ribbon is not going to be cut on that bias, which is like the big bummer about using ribbon as trim, is like you're going to have a lot of, there's a lot of ribbon trim out there, and a lot of just regular trims are also not going to be bias cut or anything like that. They're not going to have that stretch. But if you do have ribbon, and again, thankfully yours is straight lines, that'll go into, actually you can still do mitered corners with non-bias tape. And mitered corners is basically where you kind of fold in that corner while you're working with it through the machine, so you don't have a really harsh fold, I guess. It's like a nice little angled fold, kind of. And you can do it on an inward corner, on an outward corner. It makes it look really nice and professional. Again, that's kind of like an applique, so I would do the piece first with the vinyl, and then do your trim, and then, if you have heat and bond, if you have spray-based, if you want to be crazy and again, hand-based it down, put it on your fabric, put it on your piece, and then since the ribbon edge is finished, you can technically just top stitch it if you want. Or you can hand stitch it in if you don't want any visible seams, or you can go crazy and satin stitch it if you really want to. But the key is kind of, again, those really nice mitered corners where, and there's so many tutorials online for this. YouTube University is the best. Again, Professor Pincushion, she is my mother. I love her. I would go to war for her.
I would commit so many crimes for her.
She has so many videos, so many tutorials, and they're usually in really bite-sized, nice little 5-minute chunks. They're not 25-minute, I'm sitting through watching this person cut their fabric at normal speed.
Ad plays for a promo.
And she's super visual, and she teaches. I feel like everybody I know learned to do mitered corners from Professor Pincushion. I would do those really tight mitered corners. And then the key with applique is really to, if you want it really nice and flat, you're gonna want some kind of base, some kind of glue in between, whether that's spray based. You don't want to just Elmer's glue it to your shirt. But some kind of spray based. Heat and bond is a really cool thing. Heat and bond you can get kind of in the interfacing section of your local sewing shop or Joann. It is basically a double-sided kind of glue backing where you're gonna iron it to one side, and then it's actually gonna peel off the backing after you iron it to that first side, and that basically creates an applique. And then from there, you'll want to cut it first before you iron it down, because then you're just gonna iron it to your table, and that's bad. You'll cut it to the size of your applique piece. You'll iron it down, press it really, really good. I think the instructions are on the thing themselves, and it really depends on the heat and bond you're using. But it basically works like double-sided tape for sewing. And then you're gonna peel it off, peel that backing off, and then you're gonna smack it on your garment, and then you're gonna press the other side really, really, really well. And that'll keep it really nice and from wrinkling while you're putting it on, while you're appliquing it. They make a heat and bond that you don't even have to sew down. It's heat and bond extra. It's crazy strong. But I just use Heat Online, it's a little easier. Was that helpful?
Yes, thank
Okay, perfect, good. I hope I was explaining things. Anybody else have anything? Yes.
What's a good way to add armor pieces to fabric if you want to take it
Yeah.
off and wash them as well?
Yeah, actually that's a great time for me to show off Alicia. So she has these little pieces up here that attach to nothing on the design.
Yeah.
So technically what I did is I added snaps to either side. So I've got little, oh, that came off that one because this is old as hell. But I glued one side of the snap to each side, and then I stitched down snaps on this side. That way, they just go right on there, and they sit really nicely. Snaps are like the biggest way. You can do like parachute buckles and trim too, if you're crazy.
You could also do magnets.
Magnets, yeah, I'm not.
You get the stronger one.
Yeah, I'm not as experienced with
But
magnets.
I would recommend the snaps just so you know that they stay in place.
Yeah, exactly. Snaps are like gonna be your like.
I thought magnets were gonna work out really, really well. They are not.
It really depends on the magnet. It really does.
A lot of times they won't stick to fabric.
Yeah!
I use magnetic snaps.
Beautiful. Oh,
Hell
yeah.
yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
There you go.
But yeah, if anybody has seen half of my cosplays, they know they're mostly snaps.
Snaps are your
We'll go
friend.
in first.
Okay, so magnets are very good if you're trying to avoid something being pulled off. If you're avoiding something sliding, they are useless.
Yes.
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 If something is going to
Correct.
slide, it either needs to be a snap or there are magnetic like purse clasps.
Yeah, those are good. Those are good. Those are good.
Those Those are nice because they have a pin in them, and that pin helps with the sliding.
Oh.
Yeah.
I know.
So if you're going to use magnets, that's
kind of the ones I was thinking of.
Yeah, those are actually like
those are
super
very
solid.
good. I use those for Clee to hold
Yeah.
the giant thing on.
And kind of going into the world of snaps and hook and eyes enclosures because I am such a proponent for them. Because again, that's the other thing about Tails cosplays is there's a lot of, again, weird stuff hanging places that you don't need to and it doesn't work in real life. So things like snaps, hook and eyes, which are, you'll usually see them in the top of like dresses, formal wear. It's a little hook and it's a little circle and they go like this and then when you pull on it, it won't come out.
If
because
you're
it's
a
hooked.
bra wearer,
Yes, they're in
Yeah.
the back of your bra if you have a bra. A lot of folks, it depends
We
on
Or
the
if you've seen a bra.
We don't
Yeah.
have chest, so.
That's our joke for the day.
You've ever had to learn how to take them off?
Yeah, that's what a hook and eye is. They make hook and eye tape, which is really cool and secure for a lot of reasons.
Ooh.
That is
You just
news.
sew it down. Same with snap tape. They make snap tape. Snap tape usually is not as secure as like regular snaps because they're usually way smaller.
Yeah.
But hook and eye tape, like especially if you're doing like something that needs to be removable, like a skirt or something. My biggest example for hook and eye tape is 2B skirt, because if you attach it just with like 2B from Nier Automata, by the way, for folks who've never heard of it or seen it. But if you do just like Velcro or something like that, or if you do snaps, like there's more of a chance that it's gonna come off. But with hook and eye tape around the top, like let's say the hooks are facing upward around the entire top of the skirt, and the other side of the tape is on the other side, you can pull and pull and pull, and that thing is not gonna come off.
Would it work almost like the same way corsetry hooks would?
Not really.
No,
kind of,
not in the
yeah.
same way, but like it would.
Yeah,
like
they
the
do
long
create
strip.
like that similar kind of.
It's the strip part.
Yeah,
Like, with, not the same exact way.
yeah.
But it would have a
It's not like a
function
laser,
with
it's a
the strip
part.
part.
Yeah.
And that's just a long.
I thought it was up to 30.
Yeah, so like busts, the thing is with busts, who's ever seen a corset or made a corset or, you know?
I looked
Yeah, and we're talking like Victorian corsets and like more historical corsets that have the front closure and the lace up in the back. In the front, there's going to be this metal thing called a busk, and one side of it is going to be these little pins that come through your fabric, and the other side is going to be these little kind of hooky things. And this is so that you don't have to literally lace up your corset every single time you put it on. You just have to tighten it. And you'll just, you know, for most folks, you'll just close it like that. It is a similar thing, but those are completely made of metal.
Yeah.
Hook and eye tape is fabric tape with the little hook and eye sewn directly into it.
Yeah, that's what I was
So
thinking of, especially
Yeah.
how there's like the difference between plastic boning and metal boning.
Yeah. Mhm.
So it would be kind of like a similar concept,
Yeah.
but it would be made with different materials.
Yeah. It's if you want something softer, like hook and eye tape's great. Hook and eyes and snaps are just everything I do is with snaps. I buy snaps so much. So by the ball. Did that kind of answer your question? Okay, cool. Yeah. You can glue stuff, but come on. What's it?
It's great. I'm gonna go.
Okay, you're great. Anybody else have any questions for me? Anything there?
I
like
haven't
stuff
seen your
on?
2B cosplay, but I have a question regarding was like, did you put doors in the skirt?
I did not make 2B. The person who made 2B just left. I made Menace because I love a tailored coat.
Yes. You love a little boy's tailored
I also
coat.
love a little guy.
A little guy.
No,
Finest tailored coat.
Just a little guy.
Skirt scores and stuff like that are super important. I'm actually, fun fact for you, I go into more detail with those on my panel on Sunday.
Yeah!
So
When is your panel? Because I will be in the game.
1:30 or something like that.
You are 2 to 3.
2 to 3.
Oh yeah, I'll make it then.
Cool.
My shit's over by then.
Yours is the last panel before closing time.
Wow, look at me.
Nice.
But yeah, yes.
I have a question on armor that is attached to nothing.
What?
Okay.
How would you attach it if it was
I
attached?
need to see what you're talking about.
Aw.
Oh, yeah.
It's attached to nothing.
It's nothing.
It's nothing.
Floating armor.
Floating armor.
Basically, yeah.
What is your kind of go-to, like how would
Clear
you?
elastic
Okay.
is a big thing. Clear elastic would be great. Thicker clear elastic. I'd have to look at the design again.
Depending on the material and where it's going, if it's super lightweight,
Right.
might be able to use just fashion tape.
Yeah.
I don't trust fashion tape as far as I can throw it.
Huge.
Yeah,
Law
exactly.
from the
That's why
rise
I
is
was
cauldron.
making an armband,
Cauldron is
what it's
amazing.
made of,
So
and
because I'm thinking of doing like a small armband for stability, but it has to have more than one anchor. It is as big as a head.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that part.
Yeah, like he's a little boy with a big floating pauldron,
Yeah,
so I'm just like,
I would do clear elastic. I would do 2 or 3 strips of clear elastic.
okay.
Yeah.
You can probably find a wider strip of elastic.
Yeah.
I thought so. On the arm and then run a thin one.
Oh,
Like, it
or
would-
mesh, skin colored fabric, skin colored mesh. Yes. Yes.
Oh, like the
that's a great
invisible
idea.
foot, or the invisible foot. Wow, the invisible shoe
Yeah.
tutorial.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Skin colored mesh, great.
Okay.
I use it a lot.
Okay.
If ever you
That's
want to
great.
cosplay a spicier character, but you don't want to show things that you don't want to show, skin colored mesh. Skin colored mesh is fantastic. You can get a thicker, like not meshier one, like fabric that's just skin color is always a good idea too. So.
Yes.
I know with Kill the Kill cosplayers, there was this one person who made their own breastplate out of foam, and then they put skin colored mesh over it.
That's my friend
That's
Jade.
our friend Jade. That's our friend
That's my
Jade.
friend Jade.
So fucking base.
Yeah, she's so
Oh my
she's
God.
so talented.
She's so funny
She's
too.
from Colorado and she's really
Oh my
great.
god, that is so
Yeah,
base
she's so
of her.
incredible.
So much. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah,
We love Jade in
we
this
love
house.
Jade in this house. She still gets comments all the time on that. She's like, "This is my most popular cosplay, and I haven't worn it in like 10 years."
Yeah. Every time her birthday comes around, which actually just happened, like
Yeah.
still photos just come up and be like, "This is
Yeah.
the first cosplay we saw of you."
Yeah.
It's because it was such a simple method that they used.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, that works so
I
well.
think I still have the screenshots from the work in progress too.
And if you see, Jade is itty bitty titty committee in real life. So
Yeah.
like, you can,
Yeah.
it's
Like
such a great
she's
idea.
got like nothing there.
Yeah.
And like, at that point, it's just like for me, I just want mine removed so I can get a blue plate and then have
There you
it
go.
removable if I want to.
There you
Yeah.
go. Yeah, there's lots of ways. I mean, drag queens. Look at anything that drag
Yeah.
queens do for
A good,
padding.
like, if you can squish what you've got and then add some I'm thinking in digital art terms, like shading,
weathering. Yeah, like
contouring. It's like
Render your boobs.
Render. Yeah.
That's what you do with guys.
But thank you
Gotta
for
render
the
his tits.
advice on for law, because that is the one conundrum I've had.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the reference a little
Because
bit more,
he has a strap that does go across, but it does not attach to that. Like I've looked at the breakdown and it does not attach. And I'm like, never mind.
Might be good.
Big bucks.
Play Tales of Arise.
I'm gonna, because when I have surgery, I have nothing to do but finish Bursty, play Arise, and play Vespi.
I just think this surgery goes well.
Oh, thank you. It should. I hope so. It's gonna be great.
Listen, it's going to go well.
It's gonna be great.
But yes, thank you guys for coming and letting me ramble about this thing that I've been doing for a very, very, very long time that I love very, very much, obviously.
Yeah.
And I really love sharing my knowledge on it, specifically with this crew, because Tales is the best community ever. I love you boys so much. And I know that, again, a lot of the Tales designs out the gate, you look at that and you're like, that is impossible. That cannot be done.
You ever just look at Estelle's shield and you look at other references of it and you just cry a little bit because it never goes in the same direction?
Yeah, I made it.
No, but
It is literally just floats on.
because her statue was different from her character art.
I had to-
from her concept work.
I'm horrible about the backside of shields, I just don't care.
I look at it and I cry a little inside just because one, not how a shield fucking works.
Well, I mean, the back of Estelle's was like a buckler, right? Like it was.
It's supposed to be, but
Yeah.
it's never.
There's a
consistently
horizontal
in
one
one
that in
direction.
the figure has it horizontal. It's stupid.
That's not how shields
No.
work.
Exactly!
No,
It's so
no.
No, but
I literally just put a leather strap on the back of my.
That's what I thought you did because I was just
Yeah.
like, you held it like a buckler, so
Yeah,
I'm
I
like,
literally just put a leather strap on the back.
I
of my
thought it was a buckler this entire time.
It's supposed to be, but.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Hold on, I actually have it.
But yeah, because I
Come on,
definitely think
Instagram
that,
load already. Please.
people who've never cosplayed before, if
Please
if you're
load.
doing something else,
No, you're good. You're good.
like it's easier to jump into like I don't know. I'm trying to think of easy cosplay fandoms. Naruto or
Homestuck
easier
is
cosplay
actually
stuff.
Bleach.
As
Bleach.
wild as Homestuck is, it's probably one of the easiest you can get
I
into for
started with a
cosplay.
lot of Zelda cosplays.
Zelda's a good
Zeldas are
one.
technically easier if we're talking like Link and stuff. But Tails, you look at a design and it's like, oh my gosh.
Tales and Final Fantasy.
Oh jeez.
Oh jeez.
Oh jeez.
It's like,
And
ah,
Final
nuts.
Fantasy clothes are a little bit more like regular real clothes.
There it is.
Tails
I actually
clothes
have
are
a-
not real clothes.
Come on, load. Yeah, that's all official artwork.
It's stupid.
So the figure's wrong, but that is basically correct, but that's wrong.
Exactly. I hate it
I'm
so
angry.
much.
I'm angry.
I hate it. It
Now I
makes me
feel
furious.
I can help you take some stuff up. It's 307. I got you.
Yeah, if people still have questions, they're welcome to stick around, but otherwise, thank you guys again for coming. This was great.
Oh, no, I'm good. Thank you.
I'm so happy it was like 90% a new audience because I did not want it to be exactly
Con, but I didn't want to put it
That's
on a
not
plane.
good.
I don't
Oh,
trust
oh, Emil and I were the same. We were just like, we're not bringing our wheelchairs.
Oh, okay, if you guys want to come, like,
Let me see.